The most unpopular promise that Donald Trump made as a candidate was to pardon the men and women who stormed the U.S. Capitol and physically assaulted cops. So unpopular that his own VP said 1 week ago he would never do it. Well, J.D. Vance, welcome to your new life. Yesterday, Donald Trump commuted the sentences of and pardoned everyone, from the most violent criminals who participated in the insurrection to those convicted of lesser offenses. More than 1,500 pardons or commutations in all for the people who violently stormed the U.S. Capitol, leading to the deaths of 5 police officers and injuring 140 others. Insurrectionists who threatened the lives of every member of Congress and Donald Trump's own vice president. In light of all that, we begin with the testimony of someone who was in the room at practically every stage of the plot to overturn the 2020 election.
I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. The violence that Donald Trump unleashed on the men and women of law enforcement in the U.S. Capitol is seared into the minds of those officers who were on the receiving end of it, the officers who fought to defend the Capitol from Trump supporters. Here's what they said at the first hearing of the January 6th Select Committee.
On January 6th, for the first time, I was more afraid to work at the Capitol than my entire deployment to Iraq. I, too, was being crushed by the rioters. I could feel myself losing oxygen and recall thinking to myself, this is how I'm going to die, defending this entrance.
They began to beat me with their fists and with what felt like hard metal objects. At one point, I came face to face with an attacker who repeatedly lunged for me and attempted to remove my firearm. I heard chanting from some in the crowd, "Get his gun," and kill him with his own gun. I was aware enough to recognize I was at risk of being stripped of and killed with my own firearm. I was electrocuted again and again and again with a taser.
I was effectively defenseless and gradually sustaining injury from the increasing pressure of the mob. Directly in front of me, a man seized the opportunity of my vulnerability, grabbed the front of my gas mask, and used it to beat my head against the door. He switched to pulling it off my head.
One woman in a pink MAGA shirt yelled, "You hear that, guys? This voted for Joe Biden." Then the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo!" Yet another black officer later told me he had been confronted by insurrectionists in the Capitol who told him, "Put your gun down and we'll show you what kind of you really are."
The last Senate-confirmed director of the FBI appointed by Donald Trump was clear in describing January 6th for what it was.
I was appalled, like you, at the violence and destruction that we saw that day. I was appalled that you, our country's elected leaders, were victimized right here in these very halls. That attack, that siege, was criminal behavior, plain and simple, and it's behavior that we, the FBI, view as domestic terrorism. It's got no place in our democracy, and tolerating it would make a mockery of our nation's rule of law.
So we'll connect the dots. Trump's handpicked FBI director described his supporters' conduct that day as, quote, domestic terrorism. And remember where he is. He quit that job before yesterday. But in Trump's own words, they were, quote, my people. Trump made that clear over and over again. Here he is making that point 2 weeks ahead of the election.
Nothing done wrong at all. Nothing done wrong. And action was taken, strong action. Ashley Babbitt was killed. Nobody was killed. There were no guns down there. We didn't have guns. The others had guns, but we didn't have guns.
Again, quotes, quote, we didn't have guns. We. First of all, it's not true. Blatant falsehood that the insurrectionists were not armed. But again, the real headline there is that Trump tells us whose side he was on. And it eviscerates the claim he made last night when announcing the pardons that the violent offenders at the Capitol were actually outside agitators. Either they were, quote, my people, unfairly treated by the justice system, or they were outside agitators. They can't be both. But now his pardons for 1,500 Capitol insurrection defendants and commutations for 14 members of the far-right Proud Boys and Oath Keepers has the potential to turbocharge what's happening in this country already, our domestic extremism crisis. One extremism researcher telling the Washington Post this, quote, they are emboldened, they are back, and I think it means that their ranks are going to grow, and we're going to see them involved in all kinds of pro-Trump and other white supremacist activity, and their slate has been cleaned. Those who fought to defend the Capitol that day and their loved ones are grappling with concerns for their safety and anguish, frankly, that whatever modicum of justice was meted out for what happened to them on January 6th has been wiped away by the stroke of a pen on the part of Donald Trump. The family of fallen police officer Brian Sicknick saying in a statement this, quote, there are no words that adequately describe the pain of losing Brian and the suffering we have endured every day since, never to end. It is our hope that the truth of what happened that tragic day will survive, irrespective of partisan political objectives. We are proud of our son's defense of American democracy and the continued efforts of his fellow officers to safeguard the seat of government and the Constitution which guides it. Our hearts go out to them as they cope with all that has occurred, and we pray for their strength and fortitude to continue their important mission. Joining us now are two of the law enforcement officers assaulted by the mob who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, former D.C. Metropolitan Police Officer Michael Fanone and former Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn. Your willingness to speak out today, of all days, is something I want to thank you both for up front. Speaking out shouldn't come with any risks for either of you. But because of the turns and the fractures in our politics, it does. So I just want to start by saying thank you. Harry Dunn, you start. How you doing?
Nicole, thanks for being with you. Mike, what's up, buddy? I got so many calls last night, people that have become friends with them, the media, you know, asking me, did I have a response or how you feeling? What's your reaction? And I just ignored a lot of them. I mean, my reaction, what do you mean? What do you want me to say? What more can I say that I haven't said in the last 4 years? I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm outraged, I'm hurt, I'm disappointed. I've been all of that for 4 years. 4 years. What bothers me the most is so many people out there that are shocked and appalled and they didn't see this coming. Where the hell were you? What were you doing? That means you weren't paying attention. If you're shocked and surprised that he did this, then you were not paying attention. I was fortunate. I didn't receive the physical brutality that a lot of my coworkers did and Michael Fanone did, but so many of them did. They suffered. There was my buddy sent a screenshot to me with about 8, 9, 10 calls from an automated service of the DOJ saying the person that assaulted you is released from the Department of Corrections. And it just went on and on. Like, what more do you want me to say? Like, people, what do people want? We were out there warning that this could happen. Not warning, telling this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. And now people are shocked. People are up in arms. People didn't see it coming. We told you it was. So that means you weren't paying attention. And that's what's most appalling to me. Donald Trump is who he says he is. He said he was going to do this. So everybody acted surprised. Cut the shit.
Michael?
I share Harry's outrage. But again, I'm not shocked and I'm not surprised. You know, Donald Trump announced his candidacy for office from Waco, Texas. And for those of you who don't know or don't remember, that was the scene of a violent confrontation between members of the American fringe and extremist movements and law enforcement officers. And several law enforcement officers lost their lives. But this is where Donald Trump chose to announce his candidacy for office. And he's been promising these presidential pardons for those that committed crimes on January 6th in participation with the attack on the Capitol ever since day one. And so the American people own this decision. You chose this, you elected this man as president, and now you are responsible for these pardons and anything associated, the inevitable violence that will occur because these individuals and many more like them have been emboldened. Donald Trump announced to America a new era of government lawlessness, and that if you commit crimes on his behalf, you will not face accountability. Accountability is reserved for those who challenge Donald Trump and who would dare to stand up to him and his authoritarian regime.